So far in Publisher, we've done a lot of work with objects, including text boxes, but now we're going to focus on the contents of a text box, and we're going to make some changes to the text inside. So changing the font, the style, the size, and the appearance of our text. And it's really quite simple once you know where to find it. So let's start by going up to the File menu. Now, regardless of what's on your screen, you can click File and then Open, and navigate to the Lesson 4 folder of your exercise files and click Pub 4a. Give that one a click and then open, or double click it. That's a shortcut to open up this publication, which happens to be a calendar. This calendar is made up of 2 pages. I see them down here. And if I click on page 2, you can see this is the month of May in 2007. The first page over here, April 2007. So we're going to make some changes to the contents of various text boxes, and you can see we've got many of them. We've got our title up here, April 2007. We've got text inside each of these cells in a table, so we've got the days of the week, and then we've also got the numbers inside these cells down below that can be edited as well. So it's a matter of selecting what it is you want to modify and then making those changes. We've also got some text down here, and this is our business information that shows up by default on the calendar, and that's drawn from our business information, but we can make that look different too. So let's start up at the top here with April 2007. I'm just going to click up here anywhere inside this text box, and you can see what happens. The text box is selected. I've got those handles around the outside. But the text inside is also selected. It's highlighted here in black. So if I clicked outside of my text but stayed inside the text box, you can see I deselected the text. So before I make a change, I want to make sure that it is highlighted. I can click and drag over it to re-highlight it. And now to make changes to that content, it's a matter of going up to my formatting toolbar. At least that's one way to do it. Up here on the formatting toolbar, we see information about what's currently selected. We see the name of the font right here. We can see the style that's being applied to that font, Title II. We see the size, the font size in points, 24.9. And then we have a number of buttons over here for changing the appearance. We've got bold, italic, underlines. We've got alignment as well. So we're going to work with all of these, starting with the font. So right now, the font that's being used is this one here, the Lucida font. And I'm going to click this drop down to see a whole list of all kinds of other fonts I can choose from. So I scroll through the list until I find one that I like. I like this elephant right here. I give it a click, and right away it's changed. The size has changed as well, so it's got to be proportionate to the font that I've chosen. And you can see that the style Title II is still being applied to this font. So if I click the Style drop-down and choose something like Heading 7, for example, you can see how that changes the look. And in fact, the font has also changed. So you got to be careful when you're using styles and changing font names. If we click Undo, you can see we're back to our original font using the Title II style. Now to change the size, we can come over here to the drop-down if we want and scroll down to a size that we want. If we want to make it bigger than 22.8, we could say come down to 28. Give that a click, and you can see how it's increased in size. Now I can also come in here if I want a specific size like 27.5 and just type that in, 27.5, and then just click down here inside my text to see it applied. Okay. So as I highlight this, I can see that it's rounded up to 28. I'm going to come back in here, type in 27.5 and hit enter. That locks it in. So you got to make sure you hit the enter key at the end of typing anything in the font size field. Now if we wanted to, we could also change the appearance, keeping the same font and the same style. Clicking the bold button bolds it. Control B on the keyboard works. Control I for italics. If we want to make it italics, that's a cool look. And underlining is easily turned on by clicking the underline button or Control U on the keyboard. I'm going to turn underlining off, but leave the others two on. Now if I want to change the color of my title, I'm going to deselect it again just so you can see the results so far. This is bolded, italics, and we're using the elephant font. So I'm going to come back in here and just make sure that all of my text is selected. And go over here now a little bit further to the right, and you can see I've got a fill color, I've got a line color, and then, look at that, font color. If I click this drop down, I've got some fonts that appear in the scheme that I'm using if I wanted to use those. For example, this one here, which is kind of a burgundy color. I'll deselect to see what that looks like, and it doesn't really go well. I need more of a contrast. So I'm going to come back in here, re-highlight my text or select it, and come to this drop down. And now I'm going to choose more colors. If I click more colors, you can see from the standard tab here, I've got quite an array of colors to choose from. If I go to custom, I've got even more choices. Pantone, you can see I get the color wheel, and then I've got different swatches to choose from as well. So I'm going to go back here to standard, and I'm going to try something darker. I'm going to go over here. This one's fairly dark. You can see the current color versus the new color that's been selected. When I click OK and then deselect, I can see what that looks like, and that's a little bit better. Alright, I'm going to go back in here and click to re-highlight, because I can also change the alignment. Right now you can see that the width of my text box comes all the way over here to the right hand side, and my text is lined up on the left side of the box. If I come up to my alignment buttons, sure enough, this is the one that's highlighted, the Align Text Left button. Control L on the keyboard is a shortcut, but if I wanted this centered, it's as easy as clicking the center button or holding down Control and pressing the letter E on the keyboard. Right align takes it to the other side, and then we've got justify, which is really a full justification. That will really apply to text that you find on multiple lines, such as in a newsletter, for example, where you've got a column of text. All that does is it makes sure that text lines up on the left and the right hand side, and it adds spaces in between to make it look smooth on both sides. So it doesn't apply to a single line of text, but centering kind of look good. I'll deselect by clicking outside the text box to see the end result. Now, just so you know, I'm going to click up here again to reselect. We do have on the Format menu a font option here, and 3 little dots after the word font here. I'm going to be opening up a dialog box in a second. I've got character spacing. I've got bullets and numbering that we'll talk about in a bit. There's drop cap if you wanted to start your first paragraph, for example, with a fancy letter at the beginning of the first word. We can use drop caps. We'll talk about that later too. But down below we've got color schemes, font schemes, and styles as well. But if we come up here to font and give that a click, you can see in the font dialog box we can do a lot of these things that we've been doing from our formatting toolbar, like changing the font. If we wanted to change the font style, the size, the color, and then we also have some effects down below. I'm going to move this just down a little bit so you can see when I apply effects. Now, superscript and subscript wouldn't apply to a title like this. Superscript might apply to, for example, a math equation where you wanted to put in, for example, 10 squared and you want the 2 to be raised and smaller. That's superscript. Subscript could be used in some formulas, for example, in chemistry, H2O, where the 2 is small, but down below that's subscript. We can create outlines, embossed effects, small caps, all caps, add a shadow, even engrave. So if I choose shadow, for example, look at the preview down below. It creates this gray shadow in the background. So there's the name of my font and a sample of what it might look like. Engrave is a little bit different if I select that one. It's kind of a 3-dimensional look, like it's engraved in the paper. All caps is fairly obvious what happens there. Small caps is kind of cool. They're all capital letters, but the first letter is a little bit larger. I kind of like that effect right there. We've got outline. You can see it's going to change the fill color to none and leave the outline. Turn that off. Try emboss. That's kind of cool. And I'm going to leave it just like that. When I click apply, it's applied to my calendar. Although it's still selected, it's hard to see, but there is a change. When I click OK and deselect, I'll really see the end result. So lots that you can do with fonts. Keep in mind you've got your formatting toolbar up at the top, and from the format menu you've also got the font dialog box where you can make multiple changes in one dialog box. Now keep in mind too that the changes we're making to a single title can be applied to an entire text box just by clicking on the text box and highlighting the text. We can make changes to bunches of text at a time. So for example, and I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit to the bottom right corner of my screen, and I'm going to highlight this text, and maybe if I wanted to make it a little bit bigger because I've got the room, there we go. Same thing here. And by the way, you can click on the border of a text box and look what happens. Some people think, okay, I can make changes to the text without highlighting it, but when the formatting toolbar appears like this and is grayed out, it means you can't make changes to the contents. You got to be inside the box. So just remember that too. Get inside the box. If it's existing text, highlight it first. Come up here and make your changes. Deselect to see the end result. We'll zoom back out to 75% and we'll scroll up and over to see what our finished calendar looks like. Very nice. So that covers fonts and changing fonts. Next, we'll continue working with bullets and numbering.